Good morning, everybody. Deep down your eyes look haunted by gray ghosts. You live in your stories, hunted by shadows. When pain comes to show you what you'd rather not know, what will your heart do? What will you let go? May loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, and may your healing be a clearing in the wood, and may you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. Loving kindness, may loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, and may your healing be a clearing in the wood. May you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. What you've lived through, so you can grieve it. Draw it towards you, catch and release it. And now as the tears flow, let them be cleansing, washing your heart so you can be mending. May loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, and may your healing be a clearing in the wood, and may you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. May loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, may you breathe in, be a clearing in the wood, and may you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. In every season, for every seed, there's a time to grow, a time to grow. Through yesterday's curtains, maybe you'll open a window, so everything broken everything bleeding can be made whole, can be made whole. Where everything's shattered, maybe you'll find your Shiloh, your Shiloh. May loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, and may your healing be a clearing in the wood. May you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. Just sit in this song for a little bit. God, I pray that we would be able to feel that sort of internal truth of a clearing in the wood, that it would bring us healing for what feels still in pain from the week past, or God, our lives past. Whatever it is, we need a clearing in the wood that would be healing for. That we would feel that space internally right now, even if it feels like our calendar is jam-packed, or there's stresses shouting at us from one source or another. Maybe children are shouting at us. That might be a stress that some of us are feeling right now. But I pray that as we sit in this song for a little bit, that we could feel that clearing in the wood. Internally, there is something happening that is bringing peace, regardless of what is happening externally. God, I ask for you to make that so for us. Loving kindness calm the raging of the wound, and may your healing be a clearing in the wood. May you breathe in deeper than you ever could before. Good morning to everybody who's just joined us in the last few minutes online. Glad you're with us for yet another online service this morning. There is a name I love to hear, I love to sing its worth. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus. love. Tells me of a Savior's love who died to set me free. It tells me of His precious blood, the sinner's perfect plea. Oh, how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus, because you first loved me. Oh, how I love you, Jesus, and oh, how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus, because you first loved me. And it tells of one whose loving heart can feel my deepest woe. It each sorrow bears a part that none can bear below. Oh, it tells of one whose loving heart can feel my deepest woe. Who in each sorrow bears a part that none can bear below. So how I love you, Jesus. So how I love you, Jesus. Oh, how I love you, Jesus, because you first loved me. All right, this is one of our favorite call and response songs, so you'll have to play along where you are. And we're going to thank our favorite fourth grader in the church, Ruby, for recommending this song. Lord, when I'm broken, I'm in need. Feel that ocean swallowing me. Head is hanging, sorrowfully. Oh Lord, come shine your light on me. All right, everyone ready to do the echo? Lord, when I'm broken, I'm in need. I feel that ocean swallowing me. The head is hanging so sorrowfully. Oh Lord, come shine your light on me. On that morning, scared and blue. When I'm hungry, thirsty too. Send this raindrop down to the sea. Oh Lord, come shine your light on me. Oh, shine a light. Oh, shine a light. And I know in the darkness I'm alright. See, there's no sun rising, but inside I'm free. 'Cause the Lord will shine a light for me. Oh, the Lord will shine a light for me. See, there's no sun rising, but inside we're free. 'Cause the Lord will shine a light for me. Yes, the Lord will shine a light for me. You did great, everyone. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Let us be known, let us be known by the way we love. Let us be known, let us be known by the way we love. God with all your heart and soul and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. Let us be known, let us be known by the way we love. Let us be known, let us be known by the way we love. Let us be known, let us be known by the way we love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Let us be known, let us be known as yourself. Love with all your heart and soul and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. God, I pray that that melody would get stuck in our heads this week. I pray that it would just get played over and over and over again as in the background of what we're doing, as we're interacting with people, as we're doing our jobs, as we're talking with friends, as we're calling family members who stress us out, as we're taking care of kids for yet another evening, as we're whatever it is we're doing. I pray that we would feel deeply connected to that melody and those lyrics, that there is this intertwining of love behind all things, and it supports love for ourselves, truly caring for ourselves. It supports love for those around us, those near us, our immediate neighbors, but also our neighbors further, our neighbors around the globe. It even includes our enemies. Love intertwines and wraps together love for ourselves, love for our neighbors, love for our enemies, and underneath it all, love for you, God, that holds us fast, that connects us to the fuel source for all of that we cannot manufacture for ourselves. We could never be so loving to ourselves, to our neighbors, to our enemies without a fuel source. And so I pray that you would connect us to you, the source of all love, and that we would feel that this morning as we are together virtually in community, that we would feel that throughout the week as that melody that Vince sang over and over again gets stuck in all of our heads in a wonderful way. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Ruby, for a solid song choice to start us off this morning. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Haley Larson, and I'm the pastoral intern here at Brownline Church. We hope that prayer and music has helped you to slow down and experience some connection beyond yourself this morning. A special hello if you are new or newer joining with us. Brownline Church is both a local and online community based in Chicago, but we draw many from beyond Chicago each Sunday. So if you're joining in this morning, we'd love to hear in the chat where you are joining in from. This church was started to help people find spiritual health and depth, especially for those who feel more comfortable in progressive settings rather than religious settings. And our guide here is Jesus. There are religious settings that present faith in Jesus as an exclusive or divisive thing, either you're in or you're out. But our experience is entirely different. For us, following Jesus has always made us more inclusive, never more closed off, more loving, and more intentionally living into justice and connection. Before we get started with our message this morning, just a reminder that we have a moderator each week. So Ed Wang will be hanging out in the chat. If you have any questions or thoughts or experiences come to mind during our time together, feel free to put those in the chat or in comments on Facebook. So thank you to Ed for helping us out in that role today. So with that, I will hand things back over to Pastor Vince Brackett. And Vince, I would love for you to introduce our guest this morning and what we'll be talking about.
Yes, thank you, Haley. It's great to get to sing with y'all. As Haley said, I am Vince. And I'm last week, if I can kind of set the stage for what we're going to do today for our service. Last week, we talked about ways that we all as individuals can try to center our lives on presence, was the word that Haley drove us toward. And this was as opposed to what comes really naturally in our culture, which is centering our lives on things like productivity or centering our lives on things like prosperity. And these come really naturally to us, but they can leave us kind of feeling flat or empty or exhausted. And so Haley's encouragement was to lean toward presence. So what we thought we would do this week is ask a question right next to that question of how can we center our lives more on presence. What we wanted to ask is, how can we be helpful in the lives of those around us to help them more centering their lives on presence? How can we be like bringers of this to those around us? This isn't just every person for themselves. So the image that Haley and I were working as we thought about this for this week is the image of chaplains. So like a hospital chaplain, for example, those people who are present in the midst of the most painful or scary or uncertain times for people. And our sense was that like not everybody is called to be a chaplain as their job, like as their calling or vocation in life. But there are ways that all of us can be like chaplains in our everyday life, in our relationships, in our interactions, in our communities, because I think the reality is every one of us at any given moment has at least one friend who is in pain. I think that that's the truth. Every one of us at any given moment has at least one friend in pain. And when we confront that pain, it is in chaplain-like ways of being that can have a massive positive impact on those friends when we interact with them, and on us as a result as well. This is what it means to help others be present, or on Jesus' terms, this is what it helps this is what it means to help others carry their crosses or their burdens by entering into the pain and uncertainty of another's life and holding that space for them. So that's my intro. To entertain this idea, what we wanted to do is invite somebody who actually is a chaplain. And so I am thrilled to be able to invite into conversation one of my favorite people, my friend, Natasha Huang. Natasha, do you want to say hello to everybody?
Hey everyone, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here, Natasha. Natasha is a chaplain in a hospital in California. She is an extremely thoughtful practitioner of guided prayer experiences, of which I have been a beneficiary. She is a generally fun person who actually looks around to try to feel joy. It looks for it. And that is something that she models for me, and I love that. And she and I are both a part of a once-a-week virtual group that learns about contemplative prayer practice together. That's how I've gotten to know Natasha. And though we are on sort of different places in the United States, I'm just so thrilled that through the magic of the internet, we get to learn from her today. So as Haley mentioned, our chat is open. So if you'd like to participate or have a thought or a question, a comment or anything that you want to share, please use the chat here in Zoom, or you can do that over on YouTube or Facebook. And Ed Wang, our moderator for today, is going to flag those for us. But I am going to, without any further introduction, invite Natasha in. So Natasha, if I can swing a question your way, maybe as a way for you to introduce yourself, can you tell us a bit about what it's like to be a chaplain and why you're in that game?
Sure. Thanks, Vince. So what it's like to be a chaplain, it's amazing to be a chaplain. And the reasons are that we have the privilege of being with people in some of the most crucial times of their life. Sometimes it's before a big surgery. Sometimes it's while they're recovering from surgery. Personally, I work in a hospital, but chaplains work in all sorts of settings where people might need someone to accompany them through a difficult experience. So some chaplains are in the military, some are in prisons, a lot are in hospitals. And so I just finished a year of a chaplaincy residency at a hospital during, a very unusual time in our lives when sometimes family members weren't allowed to go into hospitals because of the pandemic and lots of safety restrictions. So to be a chaplain was a huge honor and a huge privilege to be at the bedside with folks who could only call their family members and not see them in person. And so I see it as sort of partnering with the sacred or the divine to be with people in very human moments. So that would be my elevator pitch.
I love that, partnering with the divine to be with people in the most human moments. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, totally.
That was really good. It strikes me that there's something like, in the way you said that, it's deeply like human affirming. The belief behind that, the theology behind that is like people are not rotten and dumb, and that's why they need to be saved. People are like inherently worthy and beautiful and valuable, and that's why they need to be saved, right? Like God sees us as so valuable and loved, and so God must be with us rather than we're just so rotten and we need something to fix us. I'm curious to hear, like, as you something that you mentioned to me earlier is like when you enter into a space as a chaplain with somebody who's in pain, that you have this kind of like philosophy of what you're driving at. And I wonder if you can like unpack that for us, because I found it really beautiful when you told me earlier.
Sure. So, as chaplains, we walk into lots of situations where we don't know everything that's going on, and we certainly don't know the outcome, right? We walk into situations where the doctors and the nurses are trying to actually fix what's happening, but there's no guarantee. And so that's really, really strengthened my conviction that we show up and we are a non-anxious presence to whatever the situation is. I don't show up with answers. I may have a couple of ways of being that I think might be helpful for the situation, but I don't go in with an agenda. I don't go in with a desire for the patient to become this way or that way. I don't have goals for the patient. And so my philosophy is mostly, I lead with connection. And there's a very helpful phrase for me, which is that people need connection more than answers. I get asked a lot of questions in the hospital that I honestly don't have the answer to, right? Why would somebody who followed all the right ways of being healthy end up in the hospital when someone who probably deserves to be in this hospital bed is still living their lives? Why would something horrible like this happen when this year in general has been horrible for someone's personal life? And sometimes I just have to say, I don't know the answer, but I'm here with you. and I'm here to sit with you in however you're feeling right now. And whatever you feel right now is seen by another human and is honored by another human. And if the patient believes this, by God or by a higher power. So to lead with connection means that I have to be connected to my own emotions and my own experiences. I can't leave that outside and come in, right? And I can't leave out my identity and what I look like, what I represent. I'm a Asian American woman, and I have to go in and connect with whoever is in front of me. And so it's about my humanity too. It's not just about my role as a chaplain, I very much bring my own self in. And the more connected I am to my experience, my suffering or my pain and my joy, the more I'm able to connect with that in other people, as well as who they are and what they represent in society. And that really breaks down a lot of walls before we even start connecting.
Yeah, that just feels so important. I'm thinking about any of us who, so we are that person who, and we're aware of the fact that there's a friend of ours, a family member of ours, someone close to us who is in pain, and we wish to be helpful. We wish to be something that can help them center, and be present and do all of those good intentions. But you are bringing up this idea that actually to be helpful in that space, to be one who is a non-anxious presence, there's a degree of understanding what you're bringing into the room yourself. And I wonder if you can tease that out a little bit more, because I think my sense is that a lot of us in any one of those situations can't be a non-anxious presence because we kind of feel a little bit anxious. Like, are we supposed to, is there something we're supposed to say? Is there something we're supposed to do? And your idea of leading with connection sounds right, but like, can you give us like the 101 course in leading with connection?
How does it actually work, right? It sounds great, but how does it actually work?
It's hard. I bet it sounds hard.
Yeah, so just to be real, I talk about non-anxious presence, but I still feel totally in touch with my own helplessness and inadequacy when I walk into, whether it be a friend situation or a hospital situation. But what helps is I relieve myself of the responsibility of having an answer or fixing it. And so that already takes away like 55% of that anxiety and that helplessness. And the rest of it is just reminding me, oh yeah, I'm human. Okay, cool. Let's move forward together, knowing that I don't know, sometimes what to say or how to be. And then also just remembering that if I'm here to hold space for another human, I do know that I'm here with them and I have my own experiences, but it's also about them. And if I'm here to hold space for someone else, I'm just here to listen, to ask questions, to reflect with them, not to share answers necessarily. But if I have a question, sometimes that question can help the person on the other end clarify something for themselves. And so if I hold that human being with curiosity and I cherish them as someone who's sacred and loved, that drives my ability to ask questions, not the right questions or a smart question, but just to say like, wow, like I'm really invested in what you're going through. I just can't help but wonder ... And if I'm wrong, they'll clarify for myself and for themselves what's going on. And sometimes it's just in the connecting and the engaging and having someone feel seen, that they can kind of connect more with what their own resources are and who they are. I think a lot of times when people are suffering, we forget who we are. We wake up and we're like, who am I even today, right? Like pain is just so strong. Who am I? And to ask, how have you gotten through other times in the past? What works for you helps them access their sense of self. And if that person, depending on their faith background, their connection to Jesus or their divine source. So that seems to help me. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I mean, you're using you're reminding them who they are. There's something really beautiful about that approach to being with someone in pain. it's totally counter to the idea of offering answers or interpretation for what's going on, because it's not, bringing in something new. It's helping them access something that's already there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And if I believe that the other person is the expert on their own self, then I just partner with them to remember who they are and remember what their resources are, knowing that when someone's going through a lot, they might be kind of clouded or have strayed from who they know they are. And so I'm just there to support them in reconnecting with their sense of self. I don't need to tell you who you are. You know your own story, right?
Sure, of course.
I'm an expert on, like, Vince, if Vince is going through something, of course you're the one who knows what helps you get through things, what your triggers are. So, just to kind of relieve myself of, like, of course he knows better than I do, but I'm here to support, whoever it might be, in their journey.
That feels so sensible. And, like, why is it so difficult to be so sensible, right? Like, we kind of, like, trick ourselves. And certainly I think we do this in spiritual conversations. We trick ourselves as if there is some magic from beyond that is supposed to make everything feel better. But I just love the picture, or, like, the words that you're using are, you're using remind, you're using partnership when it talks about God and you and the person in pain. I'm wondering, something that we talk a lot about at BLC is the moving away from pictures of God as distant, deterministic, pulling strings from afar, and moving toward images of God that look like Jesus, this good and loving, present with what's going on, God on the ground, God, not a high up in the sky, distant God. And it strikes me that when you are the person who is being with someone else in pain, what I'm curious about is, like, how has that, like, helped you? How has that formed what you believe about God? Because it strikes me that what you're doing is you're sort of doing what we're taught. What I feel so struck by when our church talks about moving toward that more close God, that present God, that God that's like Jesus, not the high up in the sky, 60-something white guy with a beard, God, like, it's this is very different. And does that change the way that you operate as somebody who is a believer in God?
Wow. Yeah. I love that question. Yes, I think so. And I think, I think if any year was the test of who I am and what I want and what I believe, it would have been being a chaplain during COVID year.
Yes. Yes.
And so what I learned was that we can say all these things about who God is, but when another human is in front of you, it's not about what we know in our brains. It's about a sense of God is here with this situation. We don't have the answers. We don't have the solutions. And there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of unanswered questions. But somehow in the midst of, where 2 or 3 are gathered. And so if it's just me and another patient, that's 2 of us, right? And same with me and another friend, that's 2 of us. There's something else beyond what we can really explain or understand. And kind of knowing that and holding on to that and just kind of stopping right there and not trying to, like, prove it or go further, because if I think, well, God's here, so then why isn't this, that, and that happening? That's not always helpful. But just to say, okay, we're here together. I think God is with us. Now, how can we hold this sacred space and realize that, wow, I see you and I see what you're going through. And if we truly believe that Jesus, came out to be with people, Jesus must know what this is like too. And Jesus sees everything within you that needs an extra touch of grace. And that's what I will ask for in this situation, because there's not a whole lot else that I can control. So for me, how this has shaped my understanding of God is just that, man, I don't really need to do all that much in terms of, I think half of it is just showing up and being real and just being present to what is real. And then that kind of gets rid of a whole charade of, like, well, am I doing this right? And like, is it this way? And what's this requirement? And like, but if I believe this, I have to do it that way. Like, I don't know about all of you guys, but I can't handle that much mental gymnastics. So
Yes.
I just have to show up and just acknowledge when I'm confused and when I'm like, sometimes when I'm angry, sometimes with a patient, I'll pray and I'll say, God, we feel angry and we feel so hurt and confused that this is happening and we just don't understand. And we know that we can say all these things because they're true to our experience and you see it anyway. And then there's
Wow.
times
What a
when,
prayer.
yeah, and the thing is, sometimes I walk in and the patient says like, oh, you're a chaplain. I can't cuss. I can't say the wrong thing. I don't want to.
I get that too.
Right. And it's like, no, that's not what actual ministry is about. And I don't think, honestly, I think that's not how Jesus's actual ministry was about either. Right. He went to the realest of real places. So if we want to partner with that, that way of being, why not? Let's go there.
I love that. It strikes me that so much of the anxiety that we might feel when we're in the role of helper or everyday chaplain, so much of that anxiety is, if we believe in a living God, a God that can come and guide us in the moment and encourage us or inspire us in some way or give us words, we feel so anxious because we're like, God, I'm praying for the right words to say and I don't hear it. What are the right words to say? Oh no, and then you implode. And what you were encouraging us, like, hey, do you know that voice that's in the back of your head, or that presence that's in the back of your mind that just kind of is turning the dial down on all of those things? That is the voice of God. That is the living God guiding us in the moment. And I mean, what a gift to be reminded. Again, it sounds so sensible, right? Like it seems, and yet to do the sensible thing feels a bit hard because there's a lot of like cruff or layers built on top of that, and now it's gotten all confused. And oh my gosh, I have to be the perfect friend or the perfect helper to the person in pain, and that is just so unhelpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. Sometimes the simplest thing is the purest thing, but we just construct all these other things around it. And some of it is defense mechanisms too, out of my own hurt or having been helped in the wrong way, or my own ego and my need to prove something to myself, right? And so it's also just constantly growing into, why can't I just let someone cry, right? Or why can't I hear someone voice their doubts about God? Is it because that triggers the fact that I have doubts about God?
Oh yeah, fascinating.
God, right?
Wow, yeah.
Why? So it's not to accuse myself or to be down on myself, but just to be curious and say, hey, I'm so curious why I have trouble staying in a situation when someone just needs to keep crying. Is there something in me that's afraid of vulnerability or of weakness, or and just to say, okay, let's see, let's see if the next time I can kind of be aware of what's going on in me and just stay a little longer and just wait and not scramble to come up with something to say to fill the silence, but can I just give one more beat of non-anxious presence? And it's amazing, actually. Sometimes this is now back in the chaplain role in the hospital, but sometimes someone will just go on and on and on about their life story and their pain and how nothing's working, and I don't know how to get myself or them out of that story and that situation. And if I just hold that space and just wait one more beat, sometimes at the very end they will come to their own conclusion. And
Wow.
I don't have had to have said anything, except sort of reflecting back along the way and showing that I'm engaged. And sometimes at the end of it, someone might say, well, that's the story and nothing's changed, but I feel better having just shared it.
And you're like, oh, awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But if my agenda going in was, I'm going to feel better by the end of this, I would have inserted myself along the way.
You would have subverted the whole process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But just to say, I don't have an agenda, I'm just here to be with you. Maybe the outcome is that they will have felt better. Or maybe the outcome is something will have been sort of fixed without us trying to do that. And that is when that's when I realized that's the whole point. If the divine wants to work something out, they know how to do it. We just show up and help hold a little space and help be that human connection for the divine to do whatever.
That is really beautiful, and again, it speaks of not just a non-anxious presence for the person in pain that we are hoping to be there for, but a non-anxious presence for ourselves. That just feels that gosh that feels. I'm seeing a bunch of. I just want to flag because there's a bunch of notes in the chat here of people like attaching themselves to language that you've used, Natasha. Curiosity replacing like anxiety or doubt. I just that's such a good one. Or the just attachment to that idea of non-anxious presence. The idea that we do not have to invalidate real emotions or feelings in any way. Like what praying can bring exactly what we are feeling, and we don't have to couch it. We don't have to sugarcoat it. We don't have to make it sound palatable or turn it into something that sounds like belief if we're not currently there. And all of that is, I just think people are. This is what I was hoping for. Is that we would kind of feel that sense of we all have a drive. People are just when you turn around and you see somebody in pain, of course you want to act and you want to be helpful and you want to be the person who is good to that person. And yet, because of all these layers of, what does it mean to be spiritually helpful to somebody that we're talking about, but then also because of all these things that you're driving us toward, which is like, there are personal story things going on for each of us that might get in the way of us being that non-anxious presence. And I find that a really encouraging way to look at the growth curve for our own lives, because that's not looking at ourselves and wagging the finger at ourselves. That's not looking at ourselves and it's like, oh, why can't you shape up and be better? This is attached to my values. I want to be a non-anxious presence to somebody else, and I believe that God is encouraging me toward this curiosity toward that, so that I can be that non-anxious presence to someone else and to myself.
Mm-hmm. Totally, for sure. Yeah.
There was one more sort of way of being, that a chaplain way of being that you and I touched base on ahead of time, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit to us about the idea of bearing witness.
Sure. Yeah. So, sometimes too, what really helps me is just this idea that I just show up to whatever is happening. That's the first step. If I show up, the rest I will somehow know what to do in the situation. And, in the hospital context, when someone is really sick, sometimes they just don't feel like themselves. They might have tubes or IVs or lots of stuff going on physically where they're just not who they once were, right? And if the family member comes and sees a family member, oftentimes we hear, I don't like seeing them like this, or I don't want to remember them like this. And I think one of the things that a chaplain gets to do is we get to bear witness, or we get to really see someone in their reality now, which sometimes really sucks and just is so painful, but also to honor and remember who they have always been in their best sense of self on the inside. And so sometimes, kind of like with the earlier anecdote of if someone goes through a long winding story of their life experiences, sometimes it's just helping someone remember who their best sense of self is. And so this I have found works with folks who don't believe in God in the hospital, right? Because not everyone's going to say, oh, I want to connect with God or the divine. Some people don't have that framework at all. And as a chaplain, I still go in and I still say, well, I'm here to support you in what helps you to feel like this present suffering isn't all that there is. Even though it's real and we're not going to deny it, but there is also something else. And so kind of bearing witness and seeing the best self in another human can't help but bring out my best self. And so it's really this really cool feeling of like, you're helpless, I'm helpless, but you know what? My best self sees your best self. And if they believe in God, God is here to bear witness to us, and we were made in God's image, and that's where our best self comes from. But if they don't believe in God, it's a very still a very sacred human connection of like, you know what, I see you beyond your prognosis, I see you beyond your diagnosis, I see you as someone who matters and who is valued. And a lot of times the way I'll pray to someone who all the circumstances show don't matter, if someone is dying alone or has no family to visit and maybe can't even respond in a critical care situation, I will pray, so and so, I see you, and I just I'm touched by the life you have lived and the worth you hold. And I pray that you know you are not alone, and that you know that we see you and we care about you, and we are doing everything to keep you comfortable, and that your life matters to us. And just to know that someone's life matters and that you're there to see it, it seems very simple, but it can do a lot, I think, at least for the chaplain to, or the person giving the care to say, that's where we start and that's where we end.
Yes, yeah, that seems incredibly spiritually powerful. No matter what the what are the ways that we make sense of all of this in the room, there's something that's happening there that is beyond our little attempts to make sense of it. Sort of on that beat, one question I have, I don't know if any like anecdotes or thoughts come to mind for this. We're thinking about like, here are some examples of ways that thinking about the unique things that the person that I want to be there for, what the unique things they bring into this interaction, being mindful of that and allowing that to shape how I might be a friend to them or be a presence to them. And so one example that we're just talking about is religious beliefs or belief in God or not, or lack thereof. There are a host of other things you mentioned before. You have to be mindful of the fact that what is the power and privilege and positionality that you bring into the room as somebody who is who you are. And I'm just curious if there are any other experiences or like anecdotes or thoughts that kind of help you think through, hey, in this sort of moment, if I want to be there for this person, say there's somebody who's quite different from me, how can I best do that?
Wow, that is a great question. And it's such a real thing because, we all have our own backgrounds. And then as we try to connect with someone else, we want to transcend those differences without ignoring them.
Yes, perfectly said. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I'm aware of some of my power and my privilege when I walk in as a chaplain, because I have access to their medical records. I have all this training, I have education and different things. And so one anecdote comes to mind. I had a patient who was a white woman who was a little older. So in some respects, maybe one would think, oh, she has a little more privilege than I would as a young woman of color. But she had never learned to read. She had gone through school somehow and never learned to read, and then was just bouncing around in different nursing homes and had been hospitalized over 6 months during the pandemic and didn't have family. And here I am with like graduate degrees and, walking in to someone who, because she never learned to read, has just, her mind worked differently. She would remember things differently, and she couldn't write it down. And she would just, she had certain mannerisms that were very frustrating for staff who didn't know her story. And so just to kind of know in the back of my head without necessarily like having to say everything out loud, I think it's more of a self-awareness of, we each have our own stories and we each have found our ways of being resilient. And this woman is so freaking resilient to be able to remember her doctor's names, their phone numbers, her diagnosis, and all the other things that, I've never had to learn that skill because I can just write it down. And just kind of see her in not like, oh, here she is doing this, that, and the other, kind of the way the other medical staff would complain, but just say, wow, this is what life handed to her and this is what she did with it. And wow, that is resilience, and to tap into that. And so our visits became about look at how much you've coped with in your life so far.
Hmm.
Where did you get that superpower from? Or
Wow. Yeah.
have you always been this smart to be able to just hear something and repeat it to yourself and remember it that way? Um, and to just really help someone or celebrate the ways that they have really um, kind of said to life, you know, you've given me this, and I will take what you've given me and make a life for myself. I
Yes.
don't know if that's kind of what you were asking, but
I
that's
think it totally is. It
okay.
totally is. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm here. First off, it's just another so beautiful and inspiring story, and it gets at this idea of what resilience is behind this. But yeah, it completely, what that helps me to do is imagine, what are we've been talking a great deal in our church, about how all of us are many different layers of identities, and how those identities stack up in the world that we live in and the city that we live in, or the our neighborhoods or our communities. It's gonna leave us a different, a kaleidoscope of power, privilege, not, all of those things. And for us to be able to be mindful of those things in every setting, like you're just kind of modeling for us a way of like those things play out all the time, no matter what we're doing. They're always there. Our backgrounds and how we look and how we interact in this world are always there with us, even when we're there for somebody else in pain and we're trying to center somebody else. And that is just so valuable for us to just see a picture of what it's like to transcend difference, but also not ignore it. That just really feels really great the way you painted that for us. What? Oh, please, yeah, you had one more thought there.
Yes. So something else came to mind too that I think is also kind of like in the line of what you're saying, sensible, but sometimes slips our minds.
Yes.
Which is just the first thing to also just to ask for permission to be there with someone, right? Do you even want me here? You know, if this is not helpful, I will trust that something or someone else will be more helpful and it's not personal. And that is also such a relief of like, honestly, it's not about me. It's about what that person needs. And so um, just to even ask, is this helpful? Would you like me to be
Yes.
here? And then
Yes.
if the answer is yes, to say, sometimes to say, well, what would be helpful? What is there anything you can think of that I can do? And sometimes they will tell you exactly what they need, and that just takes off the anxiety as well, right? So, I've had people say, can you just sit here and hold my hand? And then I know what I'm supposed to do without having to go through the mental gymnastics of figuring out. Someone might say, um, can you just pray for this? Or can you just listen to me talk about this? And sometimes just saying, oh, yeah, I don't need to know what to do. I can ask
You
them.
can ask them.
They know what they need.
Again, yes, it
So,
goes back to
yeah,
like they are the expert on their own selves. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's really great. I think I want to bring us to one last question that just I think is excellent from Ed in the chat, asking, how do we deal with compassion fatigue? How do you deal with the threat of that when you are somebody who, certainly in your line of work, as somebody who is constantly entering into the crosses of other people and saying, I will come alongside you and do that Jesus like thing. But all of us like have a drive to do that in some way, and we are, busy, sometimes stressed out, all of those things. People, how do we deal with that threat?
That's a really good question. Um, I think, one is to acknowledge that I have my limits. And so just to be aware of when I'm getting close or when I'm feeling that fatigue. Um, so I don't think there's a way to avoid it altogether. There's just a way to
Yeah,
kind of track where you are. So that's a starting place. And then the second thing for me is just saying, well, at the end of the day, do I trust that um, there's a higher being, or people who believe in God in that framework, that God can ultimately also supply their needs, and I'm just a part of whatever God can do for that person. And so This is a little different between friendships, like friends in pain, and then hospital patients who I may never see again. So I realize it might be a little different.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you will see your friends again, hopefully. But for me, in the hospital context, when I walk off one floor, I leave it behind and I'm intentional about it. I usually, when I badge out of a unit, we have to wash our hands. And when I wash my hands, that's my ritual of saying, I'm letting it go. I did
Yes.
what I could. And you know what? I'm going to walk away and trust that that person will continue to receive care from whoever God brings their way. And I will just literally walk away from the situation and kind of move on to a new headspace because I have to see about at least 40 patients a week. And if I hold on to every story, there's no way I'm going to be able to go to the next person and be present to them because I'm going to be thinking about that last guy. So that's in the hospital context. And in the friend context, it's a little different. I will think about my friends and a conversation for a couple of days. I can't let go that easily. But I think the same idea of, well, do I trust that? Really, like I'm not going to save anyone. I'm not going to fix anyone. And do I really have like actual, to me, this is the actual crux of faith. It's not what I believe or if I believe the right things, but it's
Yes.
this trust that, you know what, it will be, it will be. I don't know if it'll be okay. It'll be. And just to kind of even stop there and just say, it will be. And I trust that it will be well, but I don't know. And I'm okay not knowing. And we'll just see. We'll see what happens. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
want to one up. I want to one up that. I just think that that is, especially the idea of some sort of physical ritual, and so like in the job setting, obviously there's that, washing your hands. There's something that you can do to embody this idea of I'm going to leave this here and I have to move on to this next thing. But even when we're talking about the friend settings, even when we're talking about the things that are going to stay with us, and it's not so clean, it's not like I will never see this person again. That's okay. Like I think having embodied rituals where like this is why like deep breaths and things like that are always a part of prayer experiences and that sort of thing. Just these things can just like okay. I am, I've just spoken with somebody who I care about deeply and is in great pain. And now I have to go and be dad. And I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to, put my hands on the table and my feet on the ground and just say, I'm okay. It will be, and then I can turn and little rituals like that. Those are the experiences of a living God coming and like moving our whole selves because our bodies can go, I can move out of my room and, and go and try to be dad, but like my whole self doesn't go with me unless I embody that, in some way, try to trick myself to go with it, And so I think like those are the moments where God comes in and truly, like you want to talk about like having a prayer experience of just like, okay, I'm going to turn you over here. And it doesn't look, like a mountaintop experience. It doesn't look like, something to write home about or something that people will think is like, oh my gosh, what an incredible experience of God. But I think those are the moments that we experience God the most when we can ritualize our need to shift from one context to the next, especially when we're talking about being in pain with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, for sure. And just even talking about how embodied things are, when you were speaking, I was thinking about when the woman reached out and touched the hem of Jesus's garment and he felt
Okay.
the power leave him. So it's about self-awareness and knowing how we are affected by other people. Jesus didn't pretend to be Superman and say, I'm going to give and give and give and give and give and I'll be fine. Like he felt it when,
He was self-aware about it. Oh, that's
yeah,
fascinating. Yeah.
like he could feel the power go down and he's like, okay, I'm tracking my energy, right?
Yeah.
And so like I'm an introvert and I have to constantly track like, okay, where's my people energy, right? Oh, that really drained me. I'm down. And I need to acknowledge that I'm weak. I have my limitations. And so it's also a sense of humility of like, okay, I need to go take care of myself because I'm needy as well. I'm not just the caregiver, but I'm also human. So just what can we do ritually? Can I breathe? Can I wash my hands? Can I walk? Can I take a walk? Can I go out in the sun and just like soak up the sun rays a little bit? Here in Southern California, we might have a little more to go around, but not to not to rub that in. But what can we do physically to recharge?
Yes, yes, I love that. What a fine reading of that moment of Jesus felt power go out of him, and this idea of like that's Jesus being self-aware of his own energy level, not like I felt power go out of me because I'm so powerful and there's always power going out of me. Like such a different read of that, and I find that really beautiful. I find that really connecting.
Thanks. Well, it came out of what you were saying, so it's always about co-creating insight.
On the fly theology happening
Yeah,
here at Brownline Church.
exactly.
Aren't you all excited? Well, sort of in the spirit of like, embodied prayer experiences, Natasha, since we're coming to the close of our time here, I wonder if you could lead us in prayer. I wonder if you could take us into a space where that might encourage us or feed us in some way, in the ways that we're talking about.
Sure, I would be happy to. Yeah. Okay. So let us pray. If you want to take a deep breath and kind of stretch a little bit and get comfortable. I know I've been scrunching over because I was so eager to engage. But God, I just acknowledge that we have come together as a community on Zoom, and that we have been together in this conversation, but also we each bring our own stories and experiences around this topic. And perhaps as we take a few deep breaths, we can notice if there's any energy in a part of our body as we've gone through this morning. And I'm going to send some breath towards that part of my body and just acknowledge how I feel right now. And as we just keep breathing and being aware of ourselves, if there's an image or a thought that has kind of been pulled up after hearing this conversation, I also just acknowledge that and send a breath out and just release any energy that might be storing up inside, and get a sense of grounding with my breathing. God, you are the God who sees us. Just like you saw Hagar in the wilderness when she was in pain, when she was suffering and had no way out of her situation. You saw her and you were there with her in the wilderness. And so, Lord, you see each of us where we are right now this morning, and you see those in our lives who might be in their own space of wilderness. We thank you that you are the God who sees, and that you are also God with us. We ask that we would not just know that, but feel it through the rest of today, that we would, as a result, be more present to ourselves as well. That we would give ourselves the same curiosity and grace that we want to give to others as we notice things about ourselves, and just kind of realize that we may not know what to do at all times, but that we're in it and we're learning, and things will be, and that we'll see we'll see what comes as we keep moving forward, and that we can do the same with those in our lives. I ask that you would bless this community of folks based in Chicago, but also just wherever people are tuning in from, that they would feel an embodied sense of presence wherever they are. And for any questions that came up, or things that still weren't really talked about through our talk, I also trust that whatever's not complete from this morning will be made complete in time, and that we will continue to just figure it out because we really don't have the complete answers just yet. And we're just on this journey to learn together. So we thank you for this time. And I ask that you would bless all those on this call. Amen.
Amen. Natasha, what a gift to have you. Thank you so much for praying for us, for sharing all of your wisdom as a chaplain, and just for kind of trying on for size the experience of all of us who aren't necessarily in those moments every day, but we feel like we're in those moments every now and then, and so we need your help. We're so grateful. And I'm seeing a waterfall of thank yous coming in from the chat for Natasha. We're so grateful.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Vince, for the invitation. This was really fun, and I love talking about this work. So it was very fun for me.
Yeah, great. We're glad it was mutually beneficial.
For sure.
Well, let me give some quick volunteer shout outs again to Ed Wang, who is moderating for us, helping things happen today. And then also to Aaron Loescher, who's running our visuals for today so we could follow along with music earlier. I do want to give do some quick housekeeping as we do every week. If you are new or newer to Brownline Church, as you're Zooming in or Facebooking or YouTubing in today, you can follow the QR code that we're putting up on the screen right now to tell us who you are and give us your contact information so we can follow up with you and connect with you. And it's one of my favorite parts of my job is just getting together with people and having coffee and talking about life. So I would love to do that with you. You can also follow us on social at Brownline Church on Instagram or Facebook to find out what's going on. Or you can join our church's Discord server to find out what's going on that way too. If you're curious about various resources through our church, everything from hey, what was that song we sang? Because that song was awesome. Or, I want to find out about small groups of people that are gathering through our community, or learn more about the church or whatever, ask for prayer. You can do that at our website, brownlinechurch.org. Let me give a quick financial update. Thank you to everybody who is a donor. As we say every week, this church is entirely crowdfunded. We don't have larger organizations or grants that make things happen for us. It's all what people out of their connection with our vision or what we're doing here, or because they call this place home, give in various ways to support. So generally, what we've grown to expect in 2021 is about $9,000 to $10,000 a month in donations, and it does seem like that's tracking upwards. So that's super cool. We want that to be the case. We are hoping our dream is that we can end this year for donations and taking in about $12,000 a month. We think that could really position us to move towards some of our big plans, big goals as a church. One is to pastor more representatively in our area, so by hiring a woman or person of color on permanent pastoral staff. So we're striving for that, and hey, we'll be getting there. So thank you to everybody who gives in various ways. You can follow the QR code to also set up a gift if you haven't already. What are my announcements for today? What's coming up here? Oh, we have a couple of things coming up. So we have a Halloween picnic coming up next weekend. We have our annual meeting coming up the weekend after that. Let's do the Halloween picnic first. Haley, if you're online, can you invite us to our Halloween picnic next week?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. We will be meeting at Winnemac Park around 3:00. Very low key, just with COVID safety and precautions. We're going to have people bring your own snacks and things and blankets or chairs to sit on, but it'll just be a space for us to gather as a community. If anyone is feeling a little bit more comfortable being outdoors instead of gathered in an indoor space, it's a great opportunity. So this is next Sunday on Halloween, the 31st at 3:00.
Awesome. Plenty of time to hang out with folks from Brownline and then get back for retreating if you're doing the 5 to 6 shift as many are doing in Chicago. And then, yes, the following Sunday, November 7th, we will have our annual meeting for stakeholders. It's going to be a part of our service that morning. So everyone is invited to participate. This is a family conversation for our church, but everyone's invited no matter how long you've been a part of Brownline. If you call Brownline your spiritual community home, we'd especially ask you to please plan to be there. We must have at least 26 adults in attendance to meet quorum for our annual meeting. And so unless you want me to say like, hey guys, we're going to have another annual meeting, let's try to get 26 adults in presence for that. One thing what we'll do is we'll take our official church stakeholder list for 2020. So if you want to be counted among that roll, you can do that. If you, our church, we have stakeholders here. We don't have a traditional membership in that we don't ask people to read a statement of faith and then sign on the dotted line below that they agree. But we do ask people to ask themselves, am I here? Am I invested in this place? Not just for my own experience, but for the experience of others. And so we call those folks stakeholders, and you can be counted among our stakeholders for 2021. By being there, or if you cannot attend that morning, you'll have the chance to declare yourself as a stakeholder by proxy the week before or the week after. Between now and then, Ed has dropped a little form in the chat that you can go to. This is if you want to submit a question or a comment in lead up to our annual meeting. If you are curious about any number of things, you can quickly tell us with that form, and we'll also send that out in email before November 7th. All right. That is what we have in the way of announcements. I'm going to pass the mic one more time back to Haley, who will close us with a time of communion.
So each week we close our time together with the practice of communion. Followers of Jesus have come together throughout time and across cultures, using different elements to remember Jesus's blood shed and body broken. And so today we come together from our own spaces to take part in this practice together. If you'd like to participate, I'd encourage you to go and find your own food and drink to use. And if you're comfortable doing so, I'd also encourage you to turn on your camera so that we can see more of our community gathered together this morning. This is a chance for us to remember both individually and communally that we are in need of the grace and compassion that's found in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. In communion, we acknowledge this dependence on God as a source of sustaining peace and unwavering connection. I'm going to leave a few moments for us here to be still and to breathe. If you need to go grab your elements, you can do so. But this is just a moment to breathe and center ourselves. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he shared a meal with his community. He broke bread, gave thanks, and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Whenever you eat this bread, do so in remembrance of me." Likewise, he took the cup and said, "This is my blood poured out for you. Whenever you do this, do so in remembrance of me." So God, who sees us, may we be drawn toward partnering with the divine, even in moments of pain. As you remind us of who we are, may we remind others of who they are. May we look to you as one who leans into suffering. God, may we stay aware of your presence as we grow comfortable with having questions and not always having answers. I'm grateful that we can look to you, Jesus, as we hold both joy and pain, as we stay curious in wonder and in grace. Remind us of what we need this week in order to be well. Amen.
Amen. So good to be with you all. We will see you all next Sunday, Halloween, for service in the morning, and then for our local folks, hopefully together at our picnic. Bye, everybody.